Hello, it's Jim Hutchins for the Jerusalem Connection Spot Report for this week. I'm sure you've been following the events going on in Kiev and the Ukraine. And this has been of special interest to us because on January 27th of this year, our own Vice President Shelley Neese represented the Jerusalem Connection and also the paintings of my wife Pat, some 40 paintings entitled the Auschwitz Album Revisited, and they're on a permanent exhibition in eastern Ukraine. The name of the town's a tongue twister, Dnipropetrovsk. But we've been especially interested in this because of what's going on there. And the sponsor for this exhibit for us was a Jewish lady and her husband from Finland, actually, Dr. Ina and Misha Rogaci of the Rogaci Foundation. And we're very grateful for them acting as our curators, and they did an excellent job for that. Dr. Rogaci has written an article that Arutz 7, Arutz Sheva, picked up. She says this: the most worrisome and largely overseen factor of the ongoing Ukrainian tragedy to me is the mighty presence among the opposition hardcore militants from the ultra-right nationalistic parties and the movements there. The threat which is posed by those forces shall not be underestimated, especially in the context of rapidly rising ultra-national forces all over Europe, a new ugly fashion of nowadays, very divisive, and as among the peoples, and as a result of that, racial hatred is emerging. Ukraine now has become a tragic showcase of this alarming threat. The civic society, widespread, simply has no luxury, neither does it have the moral right for allowing the repetition of the Nazi-like nightmares. There are others who refer to that as well. Ludmila Yilga, in an article, said, this is not a revolution. This is not a revolution in Ukraine. This is war. She says, it should be emphasized that only achievement of Ukraine during those 20 years of independence was keeping the peace. Today, Ukraine is lost. Ukraine is lost. People are afraid to wake up in the morning, and nobody wants to hear all the bad news about the greed of the government. She closes her article by saying, what will happen tomorrow? We'll know tomorrow. However, we understand that peace will not be forthcoming. In light of that, the Jewish Agency has pledged millions of dollars in emergency aid to the Jewish community in Ukraine. They recognize the upswing in anti-Semitism, especially since the opposition forces have come against the establishment in Kiev. The recent reports indicated that extremists have been targeting the Jewish community in Ukraine, including a member of the opposition associated with neo-Nazi groups. There it is again. Anti-Semitism in Ukraine has picked up throughout the unrest, which began in late November. Ukrainian Jewish community is one of the largest Jewish communities in the world, with some 200,000. Most Jews reside in Kiev, but there are others scattered throughout Odessa, Lvov, and Dnipropetrovsk. Over 330,000 Ukrainian Jews made Aliyah. They went back to Israel, helped by the Jewish Agency, since the collapse of the Soviet Union, including some 2,200 last year. This has a current events significance, certainly, and a diplomatic and political significance, but it has a biblical significance as well. Scholars have long recognized that in the end times there'll be a 10-nation confederation that emerges that will be headed by the lawless one, the evil one, the Antichrist, if you will. And Daniel speaks of this in Daniel chapter 7, verses 8 and verse 24. You can speak of this. But he says that there will be a three-nation coalition that emerges initially. And evidently that three-nation coalition will be in existence prior to Daniel's 70th week, the 7-year period that culminates in the coming of Jesus. The only one that has really dealt with this in some detail, comparing Scripture with Scripture, that I'm aware of, is Robert Van Kampen in this classic book, The Sign. I can't recommend this highly enough to you. Get this book. It's Eschatology 101. It's all you need to know about the end times. The Sign by Robert Van Kampen. And in this book, Van Kampen points to this three-nation trio that three-nation confederation that emerges. In summary, then, he says, the three-nation confederacy that the Antichrist initially overthrows will be comprised of three Japhetic, from Japheth, sons of Japheth, and formerly strong nomadic peoples of the remote north. These whose ancestry can be traced to the same people who both established and ruled the ancient Roman Empire. All three nations will be zealously, I should say, anti-Semitic. In this respect, these nations will continue the consistent pattern followed by all the beast empires that have dominated Israel since the 70 weeks of Daniel and an interlude as well, all of which have been driven by anti-Semitic leaders of Aryan and Japhetic ancestry. He goes on, says, we should watch with anticipation for the rise of a powerful individual who initially will overthrow three Aryan nations. Soon after this three-nation coalition is formed, its leader will initiate a 70th week, the 70th week of Daniel, by making a covenant of death. That's what Isaiah says, Isaiah 28. Covenant of death with Israel, who will despair in sheer terror when the true identity of the leader is later revealed. Thus we turn now from the realm of the prior conditions and events to what would actually happen. Look for this. This is something to be aware of and to look for. And the Ukraine, along with Syria, Iran, that's a lot of those nations are in that same vicinity. Ukraine is considered by many scholars as contemporary Gomer, and that, of course, is referred to in Ezekiel 38 and 39. We need to stay in touch. The Lord is with us, and He is working His plan according to His timetable. The Apostle Paul said this in 2 Timothy chapter 4. He says, now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, but not only to me, but also to all who long for His appearing. You long for the appearing of Jesus, the coming of our Messiah to establish His kingdom and rule reign? I hope you do. Till next week, Od Ki Yavo Shiloh, or until Messiah comes, Yivareka Yahweh. God bless you, and God bless yours.